board representation in the first instance, that's gone up year on year by another percentage point. So I do want to stress we are on track to arrive at that 30% milestone that we need by 2026. That hasn't changed. I think the second part of it, looking at the gender pay gap, we've been tracking this 15 years at the board level. And at the board level, actually, there isn't that much disparity. So what we see in the CEO level, for example, there's a little bit of disparity, but again, I wouldn't say it's huge. So overall, I would say at the very senior levels, we're not seeing the same level of gender, pay gap that you might find throughout the workforce.
What then is the message to the countries in this region, or the companies within the countries in this region where we have seen a certain degree of inertia in terms of diversity, equity and inclusion on the gender front?
So on a country level, I think there's been regulations that have really made a difference. So if you look at Japan, Korea, and certainly Hong Kong as well, more recently, where you have to have at least one woman on the board, that's made a massive difference to their statistics just in the last 2 or 3 years. Australia and New Zealand lead by a huge margin. They're sort of, 40% plus, but they've been at it for a lot longer. If I then look at what would be the next thing that needs to happen, there is a bit of a gap if you look at the number of women that have chair positions on boards. So you can argue there's 26% of board representation today, but then the actual chairpersonship is sort of static at 9%. It hasn't grown a lot. So there's a big gap between what happens once women get to the board. And the other thing there in that trajectory is that we've actually looked at the longevity. So the average time span that women spend on any board is about 3.5 years. And that compares, very differently to their male counterparts. So retention at the board level, I think, is also an issue that needs to be looked at.
Why is there higher turnover of women on boards versus men? Why do men stay longer? Why do women not?
Well, partially I think, it's one thing to tick the box and bring women on board. I think it's a whole different thing if you want to change the culture of the board, of your company, and make inclusion more sort of the issue rather than just diversity for diversity's sake. So this year's Women International Day theme is Inspire Inclusion. And that's really, it's about changing that culture. It's about creating an atmosphere where women want to linger.
And that's critical. And the roadmap to that is quite clear, isn't it? It's mentoring, it's leadership programs for young women who aspire to leadership roles. That's what's needed. Are we seeing that?
We're seeing that in certain sectors. So again, I have to say all of this data, if you pull it apart, then certain sectors like, say, healthcare, 56% of healthcare companies have got beyond that 30% mark of, women on boards. But then if you look at IT, tech and communications, it's sort of in the teens. It's quite low when you look at what they're doing. In fact, year on year, information technology and communications regressed to having more all-male boards. So they're the two that we're sort of keeping an eye on as well.